So thank you everybody for taking the time and joining. For those who are listening in, just one quick note. Basically, we're launching this pilot podcast. The idea is to have discussions about the worlds of media, product, business, and organization. We're experimenting a little bit with the format. So in order to get the best of both worlds, if you have any questions to make it as sort of engaging and interactive as possible, please feel free to write them in the chat. I will be watching the chat. So if you, if you don't see my reaction, just give me a little moment, but I will try to follow up on all of the important questions. And with that, I guess that we can jump in. Hello, everybody. My name is Jakub Paruszyński. I'm an editor at The Fix, a publication that aims to crack the media management puzzle through insight, solutions, and data. And you're listening to Media Insider, our podcast on the changing world of media business, product, and organization. Today, we have a very special episode. It's our pilot episode where we're starting off the series. And I'm very happy that we have a fantastic set of guests joining in from all over the world. So going by the clockwise, Matej Borko joining from Bratislava, from Fatchilli and REMP. Abhishek Dadoo from Fewcents joining in from Singapore. Sonali Verma joining us from sunny Canada. Toronto from the Globe and Mail, and Alan Hunter from the Times and the Sunday Times from London. The topic that we're going to be discussing today is what's next in reader revenue. So reader revenue, subscriptions, membership, obviously a big topic over the past few years in the world of media, one that has become even bigger with COVID acting as a sort of catalyst. Every media and is basically launching its own subscription or membership model nowadays, it feels like. But the question is, have we arrived at a sort of end of history where everybody just embraces this new this new model, or is there more innovation in store? Slight spoiler, there probably is quite a bit of innovation yet ahead of us, and I'm really happy to be talking to a great group of speakers about what's next. So maybe let's first go around the room. If you could introduce yourself briefly and just say, what does subscription mean in your daily life? How do you run into subscriptions? What is that? What does that reality look like for you? And yeah, if we can go with the same order, Matej, maybe you can say a couple of words.
Hi, everybody. So as Jakub said, I'm Matej from Fatchilli for Publishers. We are a technologically focused company. We started in 2002 as a web design studio, but our first customers were publishers. We were helping them to build some additional services around their content. And then about 5 years ago, we became Google publishing partner. So we added to our portfolio consulting regarding programmatic advertising. But about 2 years ago, when the pandemic started, we realized that, okay, nobody likes advertising and it's shrinking. So let's figure out something more valuable for publishers. So we partnered with Dziennik N, one of the most successful publishers in the region of CE. And they had their own tool for driving revenue from subscriptions. You can manage your audience there. You can manage subscriptions and products and e-commerce. And we decided to offer them help, and they said yes. So since then we are co-developing this product. Is an open source tool, so anybody can just get the code and somehow run it on their infrastructure on publisher side. And we are, of course, trying to help with this as we are basically technologists, but we have a strong experience also in e-commerce, and we believe that the e-commerce mindset can help publishers grow. So My role in Fatchilli is to encourage publishers with their activities, help them create an experiment, help them design experiments and run it on some technologies.
Fantastic. Thanks, Matej. And obviously very excited to hear about what innovations you're bringing in from e-commerce later. You have a maybe one of the most forward-looking takes on how to deal with subscriptions. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and about the work that you're doing at Fewcents?
Sure. So I started Fewcents largely due to a personal problem. When the pandemic hit, I started seeing so many subscriptions, I could not be subscribing everywhere. So I figured that there has to be a solution that helps unbundle content for the end user. And the more I started digging deeper, it's been something that's been tried before, reasons why small payments have failed. Taking all of those things into account, we started Fewcents, which helps publishers monetize their never subscribers. As long as publishers can identify who their never subscribers are, we can help incrementally monetize that never subscriber. Incidentally, it turns out that most publishers have roughly 90% plus of their traffic as never subscribers. The question is, how do you identify them? How do you segment them? And then how do you layer on top a few cents to monetize that from all over the world? Right. So that's been a good solution that came out last year. We've seen good success in Asia Pacific, and now we're aggressively expanding in Western markets as well.
Fantastic. Thanks for that, Abhishek, and a very interesting topic that we'll also be coming back to. Sonali, you have had a lot of exciting coverage about your experiments at Globe and Mail, and specifically the launch of Sophie. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and about what role subscriptions play in your life?
Definitely. Thank you for the opportunity. So I'm a journalist by background. I've worked as an editor and a reporter for Reuters, Bloomberg, CNBC, now the Globe and Mail, which is Canada's national newspaper. At one point, I was in charge of the teams that ran our websites and our social media platforms. So for us, it was really important to get inside our audience's head. And we put up a paywall in 2012, almost a decade ago, when hardly anyone else had one. So at the time, all the tools we had measured page views, because really ad revenue was the media industry's main source of revenue. But once you start down the path of subscriptions, you really need to understand what kind of content is driving subscriptions and what is it that paying subscribers really value. So we asked our data scientists to build us a tool that helped us measure and understand subscriber acquisition and retention. And this just started off as an analytics tool, but over the course of 9 years, this ended up turning into an artificial intelligence and machine learning platform that we call Sophie, which is Greek for wisdom, as you know. So Sophie runs 2 paywalls for us. One decides which content to put behind a hard paywall, which only subscribers can read. And for this, it predicts how much ad revenue we're going to get from an article and how much subscription revenue we're going to get. And in cases where we're not giving up too much ad revenue and we are getting a lot of subscription revenue, it automatically paywalls it. So that's the stuff that goes behind a hard wall. And for the rest of our content, Sophie runs a fully dynamic paywall in real time. So this is personalized for every reader. Alan, you may be asked to pay every time you come to our site because Sophie can tell from both the football content you're reading and from all the signals it can pick up about you that you're exactly the kind of person who pays for our content. Matej, on the other hand, may be asked only for an email address because Sophie can tell from his behavior that that's all we're going to get out of him. Whereas I read a lot of car reviews and advertorials, and the Globe is making good ad revenue off me. And Sophie can see from other signals that I'm cheap as hell and I'm never going to pay, so it will let me read uninterrupted. So that's 2 ways in which Sophie drives our subscription business by running 2 different paywalls. Another thing it does is it places content on our pages according to what is most valuable to our business. In fact, it actually serves different versions of our pages according to who's reading them. So, for example, if you're an anonymous reader, you'll get a mix of content that's optimized for driving subscriptions. And if you're a paying subscriber, you'll get a mix of content that's optimized to retain you as a paying subscriber. So in this way, it also makes sure that our content is serving our subscription goals. Now, as all journalists already know, putting in a system like this in a newsroom takes a lot of culture change. So my role on the Sophie team is working with newsrooms all over the world to help them through this process and to help them understand how Sophie can solve their problems, taking any new problems back to the Sophie team and going, hey guys, this can't be unique to them. Can we solve this problem?
Fantastic. That sounds absolutely fascinating, and love to jump in and dig a little bit deeper into all of those mechanics. But last but not least, Alan, thank you so much for joining us. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience at the Times and your view on what subscriptions mean in your life?
So I should actually say that I have recently left the Times and the Sunday Times, so I'm speaking in a personal capacity here. But you know, for the last 8 years, I've been head of digital at the Times. I am also, like Sonali, a reformed print journalist or reformed journalist. So my responsibility was I was in charge of essentially everything that did not appear on paper. And also was the link between the editorial teams and the product teams and really the rest of the business. We, like Globe Mail, were pretty early to subscriptions. So we launched our subscription product in 2010 with the launch of the iPad. Rupert Murdoch and Steve Jobs got along famously, and so we were among the first people to have an iPad app. Yeah, so I started as head of digital in 2013, and my job was to essentially help boost our subscription rates because they had plateaued after about 3 years of doing subscriptions. In that, basically, we converted all our print readers who were likely to become digital subscribers quite quickly in those first 3 years, but then we needed to work on a new proposition that would help us convert, new subscribers, people who hadn't perhaps typically read us in print. So that was what I spent much of the last 8 years doing.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it's certainly not easy. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Fantastic. That actually segues perfectly to the first question that I wanted to ask is if you take a sort of a macro view right now, you mentioned, subscriptions plateauing. Right now, we're at an interesting point where wherever we look, and the Reuters digital news report is out for a couple of weeks now. It only goes to confirm that the amount of people who are ready to pay for news is growing, but at a pretty slow pace. And at the same time, what we see is that the median subscriber is subscribed only to one subscription, right? Like they are only paying for one piece of content. How do you see the future? Are we still at a point where we can sort of grow, let's say, organically, or is the growth now coming at the expense of our colleagues in other publications?
Would you like me to take that one first?
Yeah. Well,
yeah, sure. So
start off. Yeah.
I mean, I think the numbers show, as you alluded to, the numbers in the Reuters report out recently, which I would commend everyone to read if they haven't already, show there's a lot of headroom, I think. You have the Scandinavian markets where about a third of people subscribe. In the States, it's 20%, I believe, but in the rest of the world, it's considerably less than that. I speak from London, where we are bumping along the bottom. I think in the last year, we went up from 7% of people who pay for news to 8% of people to pay for news. Now, there are a lot of lots of reasons for that. I think in our country we have a lot of competition from the BBC, the state broadcaster, and I think every market will have its own individual areas. But I still think there is a lot of growth to be had. There are people who probably have a reading habit who we haven't yet converted to pay. Now, whether they pay for subscriptions or through kind of payments such as that Abhishek and the team of Fewcents are looking to do is a different matter. But I think we have broadly over the past decade established the fact that from our perspective, journalism is expensive and needs to be paid for. So that's from a provider point of view. And what we really need to do now is to convince users that they are paying for something that is worth them kind of parting their money for. Now, I don't think we have been particularly good at that as an industry. I think we've been much more focused on what kind of having paywalls and subscriptions mean for us rather than what it means for our users. And that's I think is the next stage as we become much more focused on user needs.
So at various points when you listen to the New York Times discussion, obviously, biggest subscription machine globally, is that, they say that there's 100 million English language speaking and reading potential subscribers out there. And obviously, the New York Times is aiming to probably get a quarter or a third of that, that a couple of years or decades down the line, whatever the numbers may be. So are you saying that the most of the growth will be from increasing that 100% number rather than trying to conquer as big a piece of that 100 million for each sort of publisher? Yeah, is it a question of grabbing a bigger share of the pie right now, or trying to grow the pie?
I think you have to do both at the same time. And if you get your strategy right and your content right, you will do both. Okay.
Fantastic. Sonali, how do you sort of see this question?
And it is to the great credit of the time. Yeah, I think by focusing on an individual areas of content that provide value for you, you will be able to grow that overall pool.
Okay, sorry, it's a bit of a lag there, but thanks, Alan. Sonali, how do you see this sort of debate versus trying to capture the pie versus growing the pie?
So I don't see this as a zero-sum game at all. My view on this is, throughout history, people have been willing to pay for what they value, whether it was a good book or whether it was going to see live performers. And I think the onus is on us as publishers to really understand what it is that our readers value. And this is going to be different for each publication, even competitors in the same market. People come to us for a particular reason and they go to our rival for a different reason. We each have our strengths and weaknesses, and it's on us to figure that out. What is it that we produce that makes them feel like paying us? And what is it that we produce that repeatedly shows them the value of being subscribers? Can you identify what it is that you as a news organization should do more of? And frankly, we're not made of money. What it is that you should do less of so that you can reallocate resources to what really matters? Can you serve your audience with what it is that they truly value? If you can get inside your audience's head with excellent data science, you can. And that's what we've seen at the Globe, and our subscription growth shows it as well.
Fantastic. That's a very sort of blue ocean perspective here, which I like a lot. Okay, so maybe looking at the other side of the medal, at the same time, we probably won't all become Scandinavia. That's always a nice aspiration, but usually one that has proven to be unrealistic. It looks like many of the countries, and you look at the UK, it's closer to 8% willing to pay for news. You look at the Netherlands, it's around 17 now. that still leaves, 4/5, 9/10 of the people who are not subscribing. How do we sort of add them to the equation? Abhishek, I'd love to hear your views here, but I feel like Sonali, you also have Sophie is also helping you sort of deal with that question. So whoever wants to jump in first, Abhishek, maybe you can.
Yeah. So I think it's about getting users primed up to your content. So as a user, if I come across a hard paywall or a paywall that just wouldn't let me read anything, and I'm not used to that publisher throwing a paywall at me, then I'm probably going to bounce off. What we have seen work for some of our publishers at Fewcents is taking baby steps, allowing that user to pay a small amount of money for that piece of content that they have landed at just vicariously through a friend's WhatsApp or something like that. And once the user gets into that habit of paying for that publisher in small amounts, there is a certain transition period. Let's say the user engages 5 times in a month. That's a good time to start pitching subscription. The difference here is that we have put a price tag on each piece of content. So along the way, we've also discovered which piece of content that user values versus which piece of content they don't value as much. So instead of offering that particular user when he's primed up a full subscription package, maybe it's better to offer a micro bundle to that user, because we know exactly the propensity of that user to pay for sports content versus food versus politics, right? So both from building a subscriber funnel and being able to segment content into these micro bundles are baby steps towards a full-fledged subscription for such users. And that's a key component of growing the pie. I'm a firm proponent of growing the pie. And as Alan said or alluded to, that it's got to be both, right? So within the pie, while you're fighting tooth and nail for the same user, it's about growing the pie and getting people Christianed into your publication slowly in baby steps.
Mm-hmm. That's a really interesting approach, that you're essentially educating the readers, piecemeal, sort of by small increments. Sonali, is that kind of the approach that you're taking as well?
So I have to say, as an editor, we tend to think we know best. We know what the reader should have. But the truth is, you have to use data. You have to get off your high horse and you have to meet the reader where they are. And as Abhishek said, there are 2 parts to that. You have to look at the individual user and their propensity, all the signal you can pick up about them, how likely are they to pay, and you have to look at content. You really have to see what works for me is not going to work for you. So there has to be an element of segmentation, of personalization when it comes to content, when it comes to subscriptions. Price points is another question. It might be worth $10 a month for me to subscribe to the Globe and Mail, but it may be worth 40 for Alan, right? So the technology has to catch up with what it is we're trying to do. And I think that's another point that both Abhishek and Alan made, that if you're looking at growing the pie, you can't keep doing what you've always done. You really have to start looking at the problem differently. And I like to think that that's what all of us here on this call are doing.
Yeah, that's a super interesting. The 2 points to follow up there. I think the personalization and pricing one is really fascinating. But before that, I'd love to jump to Matej. Speaking of what technology is bringing to the table, what is it that publishers have been missing that we can learn from e-commerce? Because certainly when I compare my subscription bills to my Amazon monthly bills, there's a pretty big discrepancy there, and so clearly the Jeffrey's team has figured out something pretty good there. How are you sort of integrating this?
Yeah, the first thing I'd like to say is that we are now talking about, I think, very advanced technologies. Yeah, so even in Central Europe, not every publisher can afford such tools, because it's not only about the tool, it's also about the people who manage the tool. If the question is what publishers can learn from e-commerce, so this is exactly it: personalization on the user level, like Sonali said. But as you know, in CE now we have limited options. We have to get inspired with simpler tactics. So, for example, and I'm still surprised why publishers do not do this. For example, like, you don't have to ask money when you like to create a habit for a reader to coming back. Yeah, you just need his email at first, so you can provide an alternative. Do you want to buy a subscription, or do you want to buy just one article, or you just leave me your email, or watch a reward ad, for example. Yeah, so because when you are acquiring users, there is a higher chance to convert those who have habits, who likes you as a brand. So there are, I think, simpler tactics, or less advanced, like we are describing, how to achieve how to create your own touch point with the potential subscriber. Yeah, so often the email is enough. Often if they follow you on Facebook or Instagram, maybe it's enough. Yeah, these are tactics which are available to wider pool of publishers. Yeah, and that's the point where I would start.
Okay. I'm really curious, because so one of the questions is, obviously you need to have this real understanding of what the reader wants, right? And Sonali mentioned it. As an editor, I also carry this background in me of a former journalist. You always know better what the people want, but then when you look at the data, it turns out to be completely different. I'm quite curious, Abhishek, given that you sort of see the data on a article level, like, is there anything that editors are getting really wrong, or anything that you would have as a recommendation there?
Surprisingly, it came as a byproduct of our original offering. We started to see a lot of content which was getting a high level of unlocks for paid content, let's say 20 cents, 25 cents. And the traffic was peaking on that piece of content as well. And there was other content where traffic was really high, but not as many people were willing to pay. So just traffic and time spent on content is one signal, but the moment you put even a 1 cent on that content, you can see very dramatically different results, right? And that's what our data started to show quite early with a few of our publishers. And for content and for a change, you can start to see that both content which have high traffic, but then high unlock rates and low unlock rates, clearly differentiates quality content versus clickbait, right? And for the first time, publishers start to understand which content not to produce if reader revenue is the business they are moving towards, versus which content people are willing to pay for. So really getting one level deeper under the skin of the user by putting a small price tag on it makes a huge difference in understanding of the audience and the content.
Okay, so you're saying that's the ultimate truth test, right? Like that's where people really become honest about what they want. I guess I can share from our experience at The Fix, which caters to a pretty senior media manager audience. We've asked multiple surveys of what people want, and it's always very, deep analytics and things like that. And then we look at what they're actually clicking on, and it's, like 10 Instagram accounts to follow. That's everyone wants the the clickbaity stuff. But once you actually put the you know, the price tag on it, that's where you can, you know, the proof is in the pudding there, right? That's essentially what is happening. That's really interesting.
And one more thing, Jakub, I forgot to mention that this propensity and this sort of differentiation between clickbait and quality differs by geography. So the US might think that something is clickbait and something is quality, and Indonesia might think something totally different, right? So it really depends on the audience too. So it is not a universal truth on that same piece of content. It can perform very differently depending on geography.
Mm-hmm. What are the most surprising things that you have seen in terms of the people, you know, getting, you know, unlocking, subscribing, or, you know, what the people really want versus what they say they want?
So, for example, somebody went to space yesterday and came back all in 10 minutes, right?
Yeah.
And we have a publisher who's written something about it, and nobody was willing to pay for it. Right? Nobody, like in all the countries. So this particular publisher has traffic from 30, 35 countries or so. Nobody was willing to pay for it. And on the other hand, the same publisher wrote about sports, about the football game yesterday, and tons of people were paying 40, 45 cents to read that piece of quality original journalism, right? Mm-hmm. So it's about what's available elsewhere, right? If the same sort of in-flight video is available everywhere on Google, YouTube, etc., nobody is really willing to pay. But if it's an insightful, you know, even a short article about the game, you know, we clearly saw it yesterday.
So Sonali, you look like you have a great story to share on that.
Well, so what we were really surprised by is that our readers are willing to pay for wire content, for news agency content that's free anywhere on the internet. And again, as an editor, this is stuff you would never think of putting behind the paywall. It's commodity content. You can get it anywhere, right? But because we were using Sophie, the algorithm was actually able to match the right minor, secondary, boring articles that we as editors would never look at twice. It was able to match those to our readers and say, you know, if you put this behind the paywall, you're going to make a lot of money off it. And it was right. We do that now. And it's not just wires. I mean, it's a lot of minor, secondary, boring stories that as a journalist, you look at and you're like, really, people are going to pay for that? Are you kidding me? But no, it'll be 2 subscriptions here, 3 subscriptions there, 4 subscriptions there. And by the end of the month, it's hundreds of subscriptions. So that was a big surprise for me.
Alan, now that you've left the Times and you can speak freely about everything that's going on there, what surprising stories do you have on the?
Well, I think the biggest surprise from my perspective was how little people read and are yet satisfied. So you know, we had a big proportion of our subscribers came to us every day. And we actually had to create a category of readers for people who came literally every day rather than just 25 times a month. And yet, on average, they'd read 10 articles in a day, and we're publishing 200. And clearly, a lot of what we're doing, I'm having spoken to other publishers, I know it's not just us, is going unread. So we, you know, in the last year or two, we've tried dramatically to cut down the number of stories we produce because people aren't reading them. They will read, you know, maybe one story on a topic, but certainly not the second, third, fourth, and fifth story, which is the kind of natural journalistic instinct, is to just, that's what fills up newspaper spread. But in digital, it seems the opposite applies.
So looking forward, because I'm also looking at the time here, you know, at the same, while subscriptions have become and memberships, just to lump in the whole reader revenue, while they've become a lot more prevalent, they haven't really evolved much, right? So if you think about the model, it's basically you pay, you get some content. Is that something that's going to change? Is that, do you feel like there's going to be new and maybe more complex products that that news publishers should offer, given, as Alan just said, it turns out that people, it's definitely not through increasing content that we're going to get more people more satisfied and subscribing. Matej, you're looking particularly introspective. Where do you think the subscription game is going next?
Well, I have a lot of experience from software as a service tools, and I'm trying to compare it somehow to publishing. But actually, I will get back to the value, because you're as a for example B2B company providing software as a service, you're able to give a huge value. You can let companies grow much faster. But I don't know, I'm not experienced as my co-speakers here, but I don't see a big opportunity here to get MRR such as businesses do.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anyone with a more with an opposing or more optimistic view, or should we really focus on? Yeah.
I mean, it's perhaps goes against the kind of point of the question, but I actually think we have a lot to do to focus on the core content we produce. And actually, one of the things that news businesses have done, and I don't think it was just the one I used to work for, is get distracted by thinking they're going to become travel agents or sellers of wine or sellers of whiskey and so on. And a lot of the kind of the senior management time and the product time goes into these new products, when actually the core product is still, in many cases, merely what was designed for print many years ago turned digital. So I think actually we have a lot of that. I actually think there are, compared to some people who are selling products, we are, as news companies, quite trusted still. Perhaps not as much as we used to be, but we're still quite trusted. So I think there is there are some opportunities there. But my view is distract yourself from the core at your peril.
Fantastic. So just a quick reminder, we're if there's any questions from the audience. If not, I'd like to get back to a final question, something that we raised a little bit earlier, which is personalization. What does personalization mean for you? Let's maybe start off with that. Whoever wants to jump in. Sonali,
sure.
maybe, yeah.
So I think personalization is important when it comes to subscriptions. A newspaper has to ask me to subscribe at the right time, and for that they need to understand what it is that they've produced that I truly value. Now, obviously, what I value will be different from what Alan values. Maybe the newspaper should ask me after I've hit a headline on investing, whereas for Alan, maybe it's an article on Tottenham beating Ajax, right? Personalization of content, though, is a bit different. What we found at the Globe is some personalization is good, but don't ask readers what they want to read, because they don't often know themselves. I mean, they have some idea, they may pick some topics that they care about, but readers also really enjoy some serendipity. And so the only way to do that well is through really intelligent natural language processing, which both explore and exploit and puts content in front of them that it knows will delight them. And when it doesn't, the algorithm has to be able to learn from its mistakes and know what to do instead. And for that, you need deep learning and reinforcement learning, which is what we're working on and what we also use. So I don't think you can leave it to the reader to tell you what they want when it comes to personalization. I've noticed a lot of news organizations try and go down that route, and then they're disappointed by the results, because what we want is not always what we think we want, which brings us back to that earlier question you asked about surprises, right? Once you've paid for the buffet, you have dessert as much as you have salad.
Yeah, so that's a fair point, and I think we need to distinguish, as you're saying, between personalization of content and personalization of offering, right? So, is the content actually starting and sort of tailored to your maybe specific geography or your demographic or whatever? Is it sort of making it real for you? And I remember a few years ago there was some pollution content, sort of environmental content that would reference your regional situation when telling the story of climate change, which was quite interesting. But personalizations of bundles is a very different thing, and sort of personalization of feed, right? And so I guess the question is, is sort of then the Netflix approach kind of the answer here, something that constantly suggesting but trying to smart suggest, or can we do better than Netflix, or should we be playing a slightly different game?
Who's that for? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Shall I come in? Yeah. So I think it's actually very, very complicated to get right, and that has certainly been our experience. So we started a pilot program with personalizing emails essentially for readers, and it took us 18 months. It was really hard work. It had good results, but in terms of getting people the stories they like, right, and in terms of moving that pilot program onto the main website, it was very, very complicated. And there are so many little subtleties that you need to get right, because the bad UX of seeing an article that you've already seen before, or seeing 4 articles on the same subject, because that's what the algorithm kind of thinks you're interested in, is really difficult. And I think even the likes of Amazon sometimes get this wrong. I mean, I'm sure you've had the same experience as me, which is you buy something on Amazon and then you go surf, you go round the net, and that item follows you around. It's like, I bought it. I don't need to see an advert for, these kind of pens following me around the internet. So it is a really, really difficult thing to get right. And I think one thing we have also come up against is quite often readers say, oh, I don't really like personalization because I want to see what everyone sees. And I think there is a balance between giving them that idea of what everyone else is seeing, but also, look, here's something that we know you'll like. So we've been very clear when we've done personalization experiments of saying to people, this is what we're doing, this is why we're doing it, but don't worry, you're going to see everything else as well. And I think that's going to be, getting that balance right is going to be crucial in the next few years, as hopefully we get a lot more sympathetic, a lot more sophisticated in this area.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Abhishek.
Yeah, so one thing we realized is because Fewcents is a cross-publisher solution, the user can use Fewcents across multiple publishers. We are starting to recommend users a daily newsletter as well. And what we found is that as much as content inclusion prediction is important, content exclusion prediction is just as important as well. So for each user, we actually have an inclusion list and an exclusion list. And if they have read something which we know about because they've paid through Fewcents to read it, we most definitely put it in the exclusion list for this daily newsletter, right? So, I mean, I think Sonali would, I'm not a data scientist, but you probably live and breathe this, Sonali, but that exclusion list is super critical for user experience.
Maybe I can share something interesting regarding personalization. I was a member of a team. We were trying to recommend some articles to readers, and we had a machine learning model which is collecting data points, and it took half a year. And then we run an A/B test, the editor's choice versus the outputs from the algorithm, and the editor's choice worked better. Again, you can start simpler with even personalization. You can let user tell you what they want to read, maybe not even on a level of articles, but on the level of topic. Okay, I'm interested about politics. I'm interested about, I don't know, sports. and it can be simple, much simpler than spend a half a year to learn to train a machine learning model, and often is it good enough? And for super advanced algorithms, as Alan said, we have to wait a little bit.
Okay, fantastic, and we're slowly coming to the end of our time here. So yeah, if we can just maybe tell everybody where they can find you to continue this interesting discussion, whether it's Twitter or LinkedIn, or what's your preferred way of contact. Maybe we can go through the again clockwise. Matej, where's the best way to reach you and discuss integrating e-commerce into subscription models, or finding out more about REMP or Fatchilli?
Yeah, me personally, I'm not a very social media guy. So, but in Fatchilli, we are trying to a valuable newsletter for publishers. So if you're interested, go to fatchillimedia.com and subscribe to the newsletter. Maybe you will get some inspiration there.
Fantastic, and that is, of course, a highly personalized newsletter, right? All right, fantastic, Sonali.
Yeah, I'm always happy to talk to our peers in the media business. We're all trying to solve the same problems, and if we can help you leapfrog some of the mistakes we made, we'd be really happy to talk to you anytime. I'm on LinkedIn and Twitter. My direct messages are open, and if anyone would like to know more about Sophie, the website is sophi.io, or you can email me. I'm sverma@globeandmail.com. And thank you, Jakob. Thank you for the opportunity.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Alan, since you're on sabbatical, you are allowed to tell people that you're, send them to some kind of inbox. But if you want to, if they do want to continue the discussion with you, what's the best?
Of course. So I think for now, the best platform is probably LinkedIn. So 2 H's in the middle, which often confuses people, as I'm finding out. But yeah, if you follow me on LinkedIn and Twitter, then basically in the next couple of months, I'm going to announce what I'm going to be doing next, which for now is shrouded in mystery, but I will reveal all towards the autumn.
All right, that sounds very exciting. And as speaking on behalf of the Fix, of course, any advance notice for us to help let people know with the breaking news that would be very welcome. Abhishek, where's the best place for people to reach you?
LinkedIn is great. I'm on Twitter as well these days, and Fewcents.co. That's our website. If you're a publisher, feel free to contact us.
Okay, fantastic. So thank you so much to everybody for joining. It's been a really interesting discussion about what's next for reader revenue. Today I learned that we need to focus as much on growing the pie as we do on dividing the pie. Do less content, more data gathering, and more but smarter personalization. I've probably butchered the points a little bit, but you'll have to pardon me for that synthesis. So this was our pilot episode of Media Insider. Thanks so much again to everybody for joining, and it will be available where all good podcasts are available. But if you want to stay up to date with upcoming episodes, get the link to this one. Of course, everyone who's registered will get that link directly. Follow us and subscribe to the Fixes newsletter at thefix.media. That's it. Thank you so much, everybody, and have a great day.